Hello there, Mr. K here, the Mediocre Painter, and I do YouTube videos to get you into the wargaming hobby, because I've made the mistakes so you don't have to. So today I'm going to talk about whether you should get yourself the new Gotrek Gurnisson model. So, for those of you who don't know who Gotrek Gurnisson is, he's one of the most famous characters from the original Warhammer Fantasy Battle. He was basically a character invented by a guy called Bill King, and first appeared in short stories in Games Workshop's monthly magazine called White Dwarf, and then that turned into Black Library books, and there's a huge range and series of them throughout the old world, some of which were written by Bill King, and then he went walkabout to the Czech Republic and Games Workshop couldn't find him, so other people then wrote books, Josh Reynolds being one of them. And recently they brought him back kind of into the Age of Sigmar. He just magically appears, in the realm, and they actually got Brian Blessed to do the audio drama for it, which is actually pretty cool, because Brian Blessed is kind of perfect as a Gotrek. And so he's one of my favourite characters. I used to be a dwarf player back in the day, and so it's really nice to see him back. And so I'm going to tell you whether this model is actually worth it. So, in short, there's a lot wrong here. So let's firstly talk about the price. So this mini is about, retails I think for $19.99 I think. You can get it for $15.99. So what do you get for your money there? You basically get, a tasty sort of show base. And you get basically a sort of regular sort of game playing sort of base as well, which I'll do a little take of that so you can see that. And then obviously you get the Gotrek miniature as well. Now, the first thing that really stood out to me about this is not that it's not a good sculpt or anything like that. It's a very nice sculpt. But the quality of it is not significantly better or worse than, say, the Shadespire Chosen Axes, for example. So you can buy the Shadespire Chosen Axes, which is 4 Fire Slayers of push to fit nature, so they're easier to assemble, of a similar quality, if not better than Gotrek, to be honest, and for about the same kind of money, about £15-16. So to me this doesn't represent great value for money, and unless it's some kind of limited edition, I'm not sure that the price really justifies it at the end of the day. Obviously I'm a sucker because I'm a Gotrek fan, I'm going to buy it, and maybe they're just playing on that. So in terms of assembly though, the base itself, this fancy base, is a little tricky to kind of get right, but it's not too bad, and the actual Gotrek miniature itself does assemble quite nicely, which is good. But now on to the thing that really bugs me about it. The scale is completely wrong. If you've read any of the Gotrek books, which are kind of written from the perspective of Felix Jaeger, his companion, then Gotrek is basically one of the biggest dwarfs, if not the biggest dwarf, that Felix has ever encountered. And he's encountered a fair amount of dwarves in his 20 years adventuring with Gotrek. And he's also one of the strongest dwarves he's ever seen, if not the strongest. And if we go back to sort of like the old sort of 4th edition Fantasy Battle rulebook, Gotrek is basically a demon slayer with some extra hops. Basically, he's got an extra weapon skill, which makes 8, not 7, and so he's also got the rule of Gotrek's Doom, and he basically carries an Axe of Grimnir, and the other one being carried by Thorgrim, Judgebearer. So he's basically lethal, he's a great character, but you probably wouldn't ever carry him in the original Fantasy Battle game because you can't put him in charge of a unit. He has quite a lot of points to lock up in a given model as well, 225 points plus the axe, which is another 125, so 350 points. That's quite a lot to lock up in a single model. Not you would ever play it, you probably wouldn't ever play him, but it was cool to actually have that miniature model, and they go for like £40 and such on eBay at the moment. So I guess this new Gotrek model at half that price kind of represents some value for money, I suppose. But really, if we look at those old stats, yes, Felix says he's the big dwarf and all that, and he's the strongest he's ever seen, but they've not actually made him that much different to a real demon slayer. He's exceptional in the fact that he's a better weapon skill, he's got that special rule, but he's not like Joseph Bugman, who's pretty much the strongest dwarf in that lore back then with a strength of 5, and Gotrek's got a strength of 4, so he's still very strong, etc. But he's a big burly dwarf. If we take a look at this model and we compare him to, say, the leader of the Chosen Axis, you can see that the leader of the Chosen Axis is a bigger and burlier dwarf than Gotrek. And if we look at, the Gotrek stats that they're touting for Age of Sigmar, Gotrek is one seriously hard dwarf. I mean, I don't know how much he's actually going for cost-wise in Age of Sigmar, but basically, his rules are really excellent. And when I first I don't really play Age of Sigmar, I'm not a fan of it, but when I first looked at this, I was like, well, his to hit is 3+. And I was like, there's no way Gotrek Gurnisson misses 1/3 of the time. That just didn't sit right with me. But when I read the rules, it's like, oh, basically, he gets to re-roll those things. Oh, right, okay, and if that's the case, then he really is, pretty lethal. And if you read the rules, he really is one lethal single character model. But I imagine he's really quite expensive. I hear words touted that he's a ridiculous number of points, but at least they've done well by him in terms of the rules, in terms of him being essentially a lethal psychopath. But he's small as far as the model goes. It's not in context with the scale that's used for other Fire Slayers, and I really like that scale in the Age of Sigmar. The models are really cool, and just to show you an example here, I've got some models from the old Marauder sort of series, from back in the old Fantasy Battle days, which, are a given style, right? They're very, very, very hero scale, shall I say, whacking great heads, really thick set, and I really like that style from then. But the style that they have right now for Age of Sigmar for the Fire Slayers, I think is excellent, and the scale is also excellent, and Gotrek isn't quite that scale. This Gotrek miniature looks to me as though it was sculpted by someone who's used to doing true scale miniatures. So just to give you an example of true scale miniatures, there's one here. Here's basically, an old Space Marine Scout from Games Workshop from back in the day. Alongside that is a miniature from Hassle-Free Miniatures, which is one of their fantasy range. And you can see that's a bit more true scale, looks a bit more like a regular person. And you can see that there's quite a big difference in terms of the thickness and the set and so on and so forth. And Games Workshop are renowned for doing things in hero scale. That's their style because it looks better at a miniature level. And that's the reason why they do that. It's also, actually a little bit easier to paint too. So that's one of the reasons why they do it in that particular way. So to me, I look at Gotrek and I go, that is one really weedy dwarf. And this guy is supposed to be, an avatar of Grimnir, for crying out loud. He should be a really big, burly dwarf who's, basically bigger, or at least as big as the Rune Fathers and such in the Fire Slayer range. And he's not. It's not that he's not a good sculpt or whatever. He's a great sculpt. But to me, it's completely the wrong scale. And it just doesn't fit. And it doesn't look right to me at all. And I'm quite disappointed, really, that they screwed that particular aspect of it up. And also, if we look at like the base, for example, there's some Scaven on the base, and they are almost in scale. They're a little bit small, so I don't know what's going on here in terms of the scaling side of things. Did they get something wrong with the injection molding or something? I don't know, but it's just wrong. It's just there's nothing more that I can say. So I can't really recommend, that this is something that you really should add to your collection. It's a good sculpt, but it just doesn't seem right to me. Also as well, and, this is okay as far as lore goes, but when they brought him back, he's perfect, right? So Gotrek has been brought back, he's basically seen his god in whatever realm he's been in, and he's frankly not impressed. And now he's back in the Age of Sigmar, ready to basically, cause some serious pain to all evildoers or basically anybody who wants to have a fight. And he's searching for Felix, who he believes is actually a reincarnated Stormcast Eternal somewhere. That's the kind of plot. But he's been brought back as perfect. So Gotrek famously has, you know, a lost eye, you know, an eye that he lost in a scrap with some big monster or whatever it is. And it was just kind of a big part of his character. You know, he had this eye patch and he had the chain going from his nose to his ear. And, you know, it was a really big part of his character. And we don't have that here. It's very clean. So to me, that doesn't quite fit with his sort of grim, burly sort of look, really. So it just doesn't quite work for me. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. If you did like it, then please subscribe. I will be doing more. Catch you next time.